Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Nyer, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. For those of you that are not familiar, the Virginia SBDC is the largest and most effective provider of customized counseling and education for small businesses in Virginia. Most of our services are offered locally in 29 different locations throughout the Commonwealth. Today's webinar is one of our educational offerings and is part of our ongoing webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. This series is designed to take a look at tools and techniques to help small businesses take their business to the next level. Today's topic is the virtual business meeting, effective meetings in a digital world. All of our Google and Beyond webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, web and mobile strategist, and author of Solo Mo Success, Social Media, Local and Web Small Business Marketing Strategy Explained, and president of W3 Consulting. If you have any questions during the presentation today, please feel free to type those into the question window and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC for having me here on Beyond Google Marketing and Managing on the Web. As Tracy said, we'll be talking about the virtual business meeting today, effective meetings in a digital world. Just a couple of housekeeping items. As Tracy said, you have the question panel. Feel free to ask questions now. This is the best and greatest time to ask questions. If you have questions afterward, I'll have my email address on the final slide. You can go ahead and shoot those messages over to me, and I always welcome those questions, and I usually respond to those pretty quickly. But you can always find me on Twitter at W3 Consulting, hashtag them beyond Google, and I'll know they're about the webinars so that I'm able to answer those effectively as well. Go ahead and follow at Virginia SBDC so that you can keep up to date regarding programs and other webinars that we have coming out on the Virginia SBDC webinar series. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about our agenda for today. As I said in the webinar description, we have so many meetings that happen every year, and really it's important for us to really figure out how to have effective digital meetings. They're happening more and more because of the reality that we have the technology infrastructure to be able to have meetings via audio, video, and through web presence technologies. So I really want to talk about some of those guidelines for having effective digital meetings. Remarkably, they're very similar to having good meetings. They're just translated for a digital presence, okay? Then I want to talk about some of the tools that we can use for hosting and managing web meetings. Some of them are new, some of them are old tools that I've talked about in past webinars, but I think they're all really great things that we'll just go through, and I'll actually jump over to each of them just so you can see a little bit about how they work and what they look like. And finally, I want to talk about some of the facilitating functions of digital meetings, being a good facilitator in essence, and then some of the post-management issues that happen in digital meetings, some of the post-management things that you should really be paying attention to if you want to have effective digital meetings, both, you know, having the meeting itself, but also after the meeting, making those effective, making the meetings matter, right? We'll leave time for Q&A, so I'll leave a couple minutes for Q&A, and so let's get started. All right, so first and foremost, let's talk about guidelines for digital meetings. It's really important that we approach the planning process for digital meetings effectively, and one of the things that we can do right at the start of the gate is figuring out why we're meeting in the first place. You know, so many meetings happen today because they're on the calendar, right? Everyone decided to have a meeting, and you know, at some point you decided, I need to meet with the staff once a week so that we can do some kind of meeting, some preparatory meeting, maybe it's a sales meeting. Everybody gets together on Monday morning and you have your meeting, right? Well, the reality is you really need to go back to the table and really assess why you're having the meetings in the first place. If this is the first time you're choosing to have the meeting, why are you having a digital meeting? Is this because people aren't capable of getting together in person? Is it just more convenient for everyone? Really start to figure out the reasons for why people are having the digital meeting in the first place, and that really helps to contextualize the reasons for people showing up. Now, one of the really important things about having digital meetings is, or things to recognize as sort of fault points, is that people will frequently not attend a digital meeting, or they'll half-heartedly attend a digital meeting because their purpose is not outlined for them in the first place. Okay, so why are you having the meeting? You really have to sell to the meeting participants, not just because you're the business owner. I mean, it's all well and great that you're the business owner, but why? What's in it for them to come to this meeting? You really need to make sure that that's always front and center for everybody coming to the table. Okay, I know it seems sort of counterintuitive to some extent. I'm the business owner. I'm telling you, you need to come to this meeting. That's not enough in today's environment because millennials especially need to be bought in to why they're being made to come there. And baby boomers, they need to have that sense of responsibility. So, even from the sort of the two extents of the generational, sort of if you want to talk about the top tier and the lower tier of the generations, they really both need to know why. It really for different reasons, but you need to be able to tell them, and then you need to help them understand why it's a digital meeting, why you're not meeting in person. For baby boomers, they tend to like being and meeting face to face in person. For the millennials, they tend to be comfortable with a text message conversation, so they don't have to be sold on why digital meetings. So just pay attention to the whys of why digital meetings. Okay. Next up is the all-important agenda. And I'm not talking about implementing parliamentary procedure here, but the reality is that so many meetings I come to, and there has been no talk of what we're actually going to talk about in the meeting. And when it comes to digital meetings especially, you're talking about losing a whole bunch of capacities. People don't have the opportunity for many times chit-chat that happens before a meeting in the sort of nonchalant or casual means that you would otherwise be able to have in a physical environment. So you really need to figure out how you're going to get that agenda on the table for everyone to see. What I really like to do is I like to circulate that agenda in enough time so that everyone has been able to review the agenda. And what that actually ends up doing is that actually stops redundant meetings and redundant topic discussions. So, time is important for everyone. So even in a digital meeting, we need to keep things as efficient as possible. So I like to not only put out the agenda items, and using a technique that I learned from Steve Robbins from the Quick and Dirty podcast about productivity. He talks about this idea of basically getting consensus before the meeting on most of the agenda topics. So as the facilitator of the meeting, the person who's the organizer of the meeting, it's really important for you to go out there and find out from the various parties that are coming to the meeting, okay, for part one of the meeting, we're going to be talking about this particular topic. What are the issues that are going to be discussed, and where do you stand on them? Most of the meeting's work should happen for the meeting organizer before you get to the meeting. This not only reduces the time for the meeting, but it also helps you as the meeting organizer, as the business owner, sort of work with everyone and understand the power dynamics so that you can make sure that you get what you need out of them, which is productivity from your employees, but also the right decisions being made from the right people, okay? Because you may not have a democratic system, in parliamentary procedure when you run a meeting, one person, one vote, right? But the reality is that in your business, you might have the final say, except that if someone doesn't agree with the decision being made, they may do a lackluster job on the back end, on the execution side. So you need to take your agenda, you need to circulate it to people that are going to be in the meeting, and then you need to decide, what are their positions on these matters, and what can you clear up before the meeting so that when we go into it, everyone is hopefully on the same page. And when they're not on the same page, and it's okay for people to disagree, you're actually hashing out the real issues and not necessarily talking about the issues that are already clear. Everybody is on the same page about these three things about this position or topic. The real problem is this fourth issue. Let's talk about that. Now your agenda becomes so much more streamlined, so much more effective, and people are capable of understanding that you're doing your job as a leader. You're doing your job as the meeting organizer as well, which is making sure that the agenda is driving the real discussions and not necessarily the margins. Because people sometimes will oh, we're throwing a party. We need to we're throwing an event for the company. We need to talk about these ultimate issues. Well, if everybody's comfortable with all of the everything but decorations, well, you can just basically punt that issue to someone who can deal with that issue outside of the meeting and go on with it. So you just sort of learn those things as you make your way along, and certainly it's a part of organizational culture to learn those things. But I think the agenda is so important. Okay, enough of that. Next up, I've already talked about circulating the meeting. Next is who will be in attendance. So one of the big problems with meetings today is that, especially in a small business environment, many times everybody's invited. So you say, oh, well, we've got to talk about, the marketing plan for next year. Well, if there's only 10 people on staff or 3 people on staff or 2 people on staff, then, well, everybody's invited. And it becomes a real problem when everyone's invited to everything. It creates a culture that presumes that no one's time is important or everyone's time is overly important, then it really doesn't create a good power structure, right? So we need to understand that for effectiveness and productivity purposes, some people need to be in the meetings and others don't. Now, there are going to be times when everybody does need to be at the table, but I just recommend to you, I suggest to you and invite you to just think about who are you inviting to the meetings and do they need to be there? And many times what I see missing from meetings are actually the other people who are going to be helping with implementation. So for example, I say, you know what, we need to execute this new marketing strategy. And we're going to do that by hiring, these 3 outside vendors to basically make that happen. And so I go ahead and hold a meeting. I bring together my director of sales and marketing and our team, and we have a meeting. Well, who's the big missing parties from that meeting? Well, of course, the outside vendors, the people who need to actually be there at the table to execute. If they're not a part of that meeting, and maybe they're not a part of the entire meeting, maybe I have the first part of the meeting where we discuss how we're going to negotiate the contract, what we're going to expect of them, and those types of things, and then they join maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes into the meeting time. Remember, it's a digital meeting, so all they're doing is just dialing in or calling in or logging into the web platform that we're using for the digital meeting. So you can actually stagger out attendance and also let people come and go as they're needed. Okay, so you don't need someone there for all of the meeting. Have them log out, log back in. The other issue is filling roles. Okay, so it's really important that you have at least 4 different people in the meeting. One is a facilitator. 2 are the attendees as a group. 3 is having someone who takes meeting notes. We call them scribes, and someone who's a timer. So you should always have a backup facilitator also in play. So say, for example, you are facilitating the meeting and your internet or telephone line drops out. Well, who's going to take over? You should have someone who is basically going to be able to step in temporarily while you figure out your technology issue, or if you're not capable of continuing on in the meeting at all, the meeting needs to move on. So having a backup facilitator is a person who can, call the meeting to a close if necessary because you are required to be there to make decisions or otherwise. But have someone who's a backup. In case I can't take over, you're in place. Just tag that person to know so that they're on to make that happen. I usually find that to be very, very helpful, especially when technology problems happen. They're always going to happen. So the facilitator is going to likely be you, but as the business owner, but you might decide that you're not the best person to facilitate the meetings. Maybe it's a little bit, you have other things going on. Just make sure there's someone who is going to be facilitating the meeting, and that helps everybody in the long run understand who should be the person they look to for procedural items or mechanisms as they move through the meeting. On the topic of the scribe, many times people forget that a scribe is someone who's supposed to be taking minute notes. Frequently they're a member participant, but sometimes they don't have to be. So you may decide that you have someone outside the meeting actually attend in order to be able to take minutes so that everybody who is actually in the meeting can be doing the thinking and analysis and synthesis that's necessary during it. So think about whether or not the person in the meeting is going to be someone in the meeting who's going to fill that role, or whether it's going to be someone who is outside of the meeting, just to keep that thought in mind. And then someone who's a timer. That could be you as the facilitator, but it could also be someone who just keeps everybody on track. That might be every 5 or 10 minutes, just, letting people know, we've been on this topic for 5 minutes, we've been on this topic for 10 minutes, we've been on this topic for 15, or if we say on the agenda, we're only going to spend 30 minutes on this particular topic, agenda point, then once 30 minutes is up, well, great, we're going to either, submit a decision, move it along, or we're going to table this for a later decision or vote, and we'll put that into unfinished business in the next meeting. Whatever it's going to be, you've got to have a conditional for that timer, so the timer knows what the edict is going to be when time ends, so that he can let everybody else know, or she can let everybody else know. Make sense? Great. Next up is setting a time for the meeting. When meetings happen really matter, especially in digital meetings. You might have people who are in multiple time zones, and that means that if you catch somebody at the beginning of their mid-afternoon or over their lunch break, it's not necessarily the best time for them to have that meeting. And so I tend to like digital meetings at the beginnings of days. Of course, you have to keep that in mind. If you have a 9 a.m. meeting on the East Coast, that's a 6 a.m. meeting on the West Coast, and that might not necessarily be so great for the person who is attempting to log in for that meeting. So just keep those things in mind. As well, remember that the time to meet ends up being the only sort of issue outside of time and place. So because you don't have to worry about a digital meeting happening in a particular place, you don't have to worry about location as much. However, I always find it to be important to remember that for myself, I travel a lot for work, and so I'm constantly on the road, and that means that sometimes sitting in an airport or a train station is not the best place for me to have a meeting. So even though, yes, I'm available during that time frame, it is not the best time to meet for me, because I've got people walking by. I can't necessarily start talking about client matters for confidentiality purposes, and I certainly can't openly have an effective discussion about things that might be personal or intimate related to the business. So I don't want to go around spouting that off in a public space. So just be aware that best times to meet may not necessarily exclude location. Where people are and what's going to be said should be taken into account based on the agenda and who and where people are going to be. So best time to meet does have to include location to some extent, but for different reasons, okay? So now that you've heard me talk about agenda for a little bit, I think it's really important for us all to take into account that agendas should really be tailored to match the length of the meeting. And so, or that is, the length of the meeting should be tailored to match the agenda. And the reason for that is that if you have done your pre-work as a good meeting organizer, then you've gone ahead and figured out how much discussion time we're really going to need for points 1, 2, and 3 on the agenda. Okay, so if point 1 takes 10 minutes, point 2 is going to take 35 minutes or 40 minutes, and point 3 is going to take us, another 10 minutes. Well, then we know that we need an hour for that meeting. We need maybe an hour or 5 minutes for that meeting, and that should be what the meeting time is set for, and really no more. We tend to push the length of meetings beyond their boundaries. That means that meetings take much longer than are necessary. So just make sure that you're going ahead and setting the meeting length for what it matches. If you go 3 points, each of them are 10 minutes, well then you've got a 30-minute meeting. Okay, there's no reason to set an hour for a meeting that only needs 30 minutes. Okay, so this really helps gauge how much time and discussion is going to be had on the topic. And this is not about, oh, well, I don't know how much time is going to be talked about discussion point 1, because this is Parkinson's law. Time and discussion will expand to the amount of time you give it, okay? So if you say that we're only going to talk about a topic for 10 minutes, then by golly, that's it. You're giving 10 minutes to it, all right? Because if you say we're going to talk for 45 minutes about it, well, then people feel like they have to keep talking about something. So I really do think that you need to set time effectively to really reduce the lengths of meetings and to help people stay efficient with their language and with their discussion, and really letting the cream rise to the top in terms of the real issues that people are feeling. One of the things that in the book How the Wise Decide, the Lessons of 21 Extraordinary Leaders, it's by Bryn Zeckhauser and Aaron Sandusky, and one of the chapters talks about the founder of DECA Research and Development Corporation, Dean Kamen, and how he calls it a room filled with barbarians. People basically, being a little bit ruckus and sort of argumentative and all of that other fun stuff. But the reality is that it's what the authors call a culture of candor. And the culture of candor concept that they talk about is really this idea of being able to talk about the real issues when it comes to agenda items. And, obviously being courteous and being agreeable without, disagreeing without being disagreeable, is really important. But it's also important for us to go ahead and make sure that when we're covering issues in the meeting agenda, we're really talking about the real issues and not the surface issues, okay? As I said before, it can be really helpful for participants to just leave once their agenda items are done. So many times what we do is we tell people that they have to be here for a meeting, okay? But it would be really great if you told people, no, you're here for meeting point one. Once meeting point one is over, you're good to go back to the work you need to do, because this is a small business. This isn't, a big corporate where you are just, filling up time and space on a 9 to 5 clock. So it's really important for you to have people stay for parts of the meeting. They may even stay for part one and come back for part five. That's okay. So they can jump in and jump out, and they can go check email and deal with other things, and they don't have to be there for those kinds of things. And one of the major complaints for people who are attending meetings, especially digital meetings, is that they're sort of stuck, right? And so then for 3 discussion points, which could cover an hour, they basically have to check out sort of surreptitiously. They're looking at their screen, maybe they're looking at their webcam, or maybe they're on phone, but they're on mute, and they're doing other things. Well, why put them through that? Give them the leeway to leave the meeting and come back for just the portions that are for them and call it a day. Again, this is if they really don't need to be there. If you really do believe they need to be there, then they should be there and present. I see a question in the question panel. Should I pause for
Sure.
questions?
Ray, we have a couple of questions at this point. The
Great.
first one, do you recommend Toastmasters for learning about how to hold meetings?
Okay, so Toastmasters is primarily designed for being able to deliver presentations. So it's about sort of carrying yourself in a public speaking environment, and meetings are definitely one form of public speaking. What I would really recommend is actually for you to look at anywhere that handles parliamentary procedure, and not for the perspective that you just necessarily need to invoke and practice parliamentary procedure in your own meetings, but I'm one of those firm believers in Robert's Rules of Order, and I think that to a great extent, business meetings can do so much more and so many greater things, especially in a small business environment, if everyone is required to understand how parliamentary procedure works. The reason for parliamentary procedure is to understand that people have a voice, people should have an agenda, people should have a mechanism for dealing with issues and conflict so that people can be courteous and still be productive, and so that motions and points of order can be brought forth to the table and better decisions can be made. So I would look to anywhere where you might have true parliamentary procedure held. So that might be, anywhere that you have a public forum, any of your town council meetings, if your PTA is holding open meetings and you happen to be a parent with a child in public school systems, and looking for environments where that might be. Lots of nonprofit and charitable and other community-based organizations, board meetings are typically held that way. Look for those kinds of opportunities to be able to see how parliamentary procedures, because that's how good business meetings are run. Okay, and bad ones too. You'll know the bad ones when you see them. So I would look at those. I don't know whether or not Toastmasters adheres to parliamentary procedure. If they do, then absolutely, I would think that would be a great opportunity to be able to see and interact and engage in good meeting facilitation. But really what you're looking for is anywhere where there's going to be a parliamentarian, and that is actually a professional position. Parliamentarians are people for hire who manage meetings. But look for those folks, and look for any open organization that is going to have parliamentary procedure in place, and then you can lift those best practices, good practices, to your meetings.
We had one other question, and then the participant who asked the original question said that Toastmasters actually does deal with very much how to run a meeting and makes many of the same recommendations that you just did in your presentation. So
Fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah.
just to let you know. And then the second question was, should there be a minimum or a maximum number of people involved in the digital meetings based on the meeting length?
I don't have a recommendation. I mean, that really depends upon the points, being brought to the table in the meeting. So if there's 2 people in the meeting because you're the only 2 who need to be involved, then that's who needs to be in the meeting. I would definitely look at each of the meeting points, in the agenda. Say, point 1, that these people need to be involved. And what you're really doing is in my mind, you're creating multiple mini meetings, right? So an effective digital meeting is basically a set of opportunities for people to collaborate in the same time and deal with multiple issues at the same time, okay? Now, this meeting may be all about sales and marketing, or maybe all about HR, or all about some other issue, right? But they're all categorically the same, or we just have to deal with operations this week, okay, at this meeting. So, there may be lots of disparate issues, and that's where you have really the more highly customized points, where point 1 might be about HR, and you have these 3 people who are meeting. You're going to be there as the business owner, so you need the 4 of you there. Then for point 2, you may need 3 other different people. But for efficiency of your own time, you're going to hold that meeting and have everybody sort of join in and out as necessary. I hope that helps sort of guide you in terms of knowing those kinds of things. And then, inviting people who are appropriate to the meeting. Again, like I said, in many small businesses, it's the outside folks who are frequently not invited in to have a say, and they're frequently the people who are implementing. If you're hiring an outside vendor, if you have consultants, or if you have something else that's going to be done outside of your doors, you need to really bring them into the meeting and the conversation. Okay, that sometimes creates conflict in terms of scheduling and so on and so forth, but it's worth it at the end of the day to have one meeting where things get decided than having multiple meetings and a poor decision being made on the sort of the end side of it, because not everybody heard everybody else. The game of telephone basically happens. You're going to relay that information from one person to the next person to the next person. By the time everyone's done, they've applied their own thoughts and feelings to what you've said as opposed to what the actual parties have said. So it's important to have the real people at the table say the things that need to be said. Okay?
Great. Thanks, Ray.
Wonderful. Finally, in sort of the guidelines section of today's discussion, I want us to talk about the realities of effective digital meetings, and this is really where, I mean, in a real meeting, a physical space is usually the issue. Making sure that you have access to the conference room. It's on, it's booked in the calendar if you have a calendar for your conference rooms, or if you need to get a conference space at a co-working location or executive office suite, or if you're meeting at someone else's office, you need to make sure all those things. Well, the same thing sort of applies when it comes to effective digital meetings. Of course, you have to have the right infrastructure. Do you have the right equipment for an effective digital meeting? Many times a digital meeting just needs your smartphone. If you have a cell phone or a smartphone, you can dial in for audio only. If you have a computer, basically, if you're connecting to this webinar and watching it effectively, you likely have all of the equipment you need in order to be able to have a digital meeting. So, maybe the addition of a headphone and with a microphone built into it so that not everyone gets a lot of echo, because that's one of the big issues with digital meetings, is that people use the webcam and microphone built into their laptops, and unfortunately, with those microphones, they're not the highest quality, and they frequently hear, they're hearing the audio coming out of the speakers of your own laptop or computer, and so therefore they pick that up, and then it basically echoes and echoes. You've probably been on those kinds of calls or webinars where those echo problems happen. So a headset with a good microphone on it is really, really important. So, but going back to the point on the slide, do you need audio, video, and/or document sharing and collaboration? Okay, these are 4 distinct things, and so I typically say document sharing and screen sharing are pretty much the same things in my eyes, but they are definitely different things. But audio, is this an audio-only meeting? Does everybody just need to be able to hear one another? Okay, that's one level of meeting. Do you want it to be more personable? This is my preference for all of you, is to actually only do digital meetings that require big decisions to be done with video. Okay, so audio and video. So, and you need to have a quick meeting with 3 people, you hop on a conference line and you have that kind of meeting. That's great, especially for referral kinds of meetings. I want to introduce Tracy to a great business contact of mine. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say, hey Tracy, I'm going to introduce you all by conference phone line. Let's jump on a conference line. We all hop on. We have a quick discussion. I make the segue out of the conversation, introducing the 2 parties. Tracy's now met this person that I've wanted to introduce her to, and now we're good to go. Okay, that's an easy sort of audio-only digital meeting. But if we're going to discuss the budget 2016, well, that's a much more potentially conflict-filled conversation, and that discussion and those decision points should really have more face-to-face associated with it, in my opinion. So I think video is then the appropriate mechanism there. So just make those decision points internally, and I recommend that you actually write this all down for your company. Have a list and say, for these meetings, they're comfortable. We could just do audio, and that's going to be fine. For these types of meetings, we're going to do them in video, and we need these components when we do video. That is document sharing, which could just be screen sharing. So say, for example, you need everybody to be on the same page regarding the same document. You're trying to prepare a PowerPoint presentation for a sales presentation that you're giving, or you need to write up a contract for an upcoming proposal or a client meeting. Well, then we need to go ahead and share that document. Sharing the document, for me, frequently means document screen sharing, because I don't want to send a document by email to everybody so that everybody has 4 or 5 different copies, or 20 or 500 different copies, and then everybody's working on 500 different documents. So I'm very much an advocate for using something like Office 365 or Google Docs so that everybody's working on and looking at the same document. And many times what I want them to do is look at the document, but then when we're on screen together during the meeting, I want everybody to be looking at my screen with the one document so that everybody is on the same page. Because frequently what will happen is I looked at the document, I did my line edits, I've done track changes, and now I've done all the changes in my document, and so the document fundamentally looks different to me. So when we start discussing the document, well, my document doesn't match your document. My document looks completely different than yours, and now conflict happens, because not that I'm going to argue with you, but I am understanding the document different because I've changed the document. So you really need to make sure that everybody's looking at the same document and saying, okay, on line 3 of that document, or on slide 3 that we're looking at, you have this word, and I really think it should be that word. Okay, so that's document sharing. Then collaboration is where you could use a tool like Google Docs, and it's within the Google Drive suite, and now you're all logged into the same document, and you're all actually making edits and adding to the document together. So I'm in the process of co-authoring a small guide with a colleague of mine. And so as we were doing that, we said, you know what, we need to have basically a weekly digital meeting where we meet and we actually work on this together. So that's what we did. We're audio video, so we're meeting by audio video, so we're on camera and we're on microphone and headset, so we're hearing each other synchronously. And we're document collaborating. That is, we're both logged into the same Google document, and now he's working on one section of the document, I'm working another one. But when he has a question about it, or he's like, you know what, I'm having trouble with this particular concept, I just scroll up and I see exactly where he is and what he's doing. Right? So our digital meetings are so effective because we're working in real time at the same time. Okay, so it's like co-working, but virtually. Okay, really, really cool stuff. So the point, all told, is you need to decide on what are the parts of the digital meeting that are going to require different things. This is going to require you to ask people for different points on the agenda. What are you going to cover? Are you when you give your report on X, are you going to need these things? Outline what those are and make sure that they're all available for your upcoming meeting. Okay? I see more questions, so before I move on to the next section, Tracy, do you want me to answer those if they are?
There aren't any other questions right now.
Okay, great, wonderful. So now I'm going to just go over an overview of web meeting tools, okay? So my criteria for these web meeting tools were for them to be fully web-based. So I eliminated tools like the Citrix's Go to Meeting or WebEx or those other things. We typically think of them as being web-based meetings, but they require you to download software and, of course, have installed technology infrastructure that is not necessary. So I chose tools that are browser-based only. Maybe they require a plugin or two to be installed, but nothing more than you would have installed most likely on your computer already. And so that's where I'm coming from. I'm coming from you should be able to walk up to any computer in the world, connected to the internet with a microphone and a webcam and headset, and be able to conduct an effective digital meeting. Okay, so those are the criteria from which I looked at this, and so these are my basic recommendations, and then I'm going to actually jump over and look at each of the tools with you just briefly so that you can see them and be familiar with sort of what they look like. At least I'm not going to be able to go into depth into the tools themselves, but you'll at least be able to see what they look like. Okay, feel free to ask questions about the specifics tools. I've used all of them in some way, shape, or form, so I probably have some familiarity with each of them. Okay, so first up is the scheduling bear. Okay, so the big giant gorilla in the room is scheduling many times, and for those purposes, I really like the tool Doodle. Okay, so it's just doodle.com, and this allows you to be able to send out a notice, and people can do a couple of different things. They can say, I'm available for this time frame, I'm not available for this time, and if I have to, I can make this time. Okay, so I love that factor because you can say, okay, well, this is not the ideal time for this person, but it's the ideal time for everybody else. So this person, by majority, is going to give us that time because it's the best time for everyone else. All right, so I love Doodle for that reason, and it's free. Doodle is free. I mean, there's a for-pay version of it, which takes away some of the branding and advertising and whatever, but it's just a quick scheduling tool. So unless you have a real strong necessity to pay for it, you really don't have to. Not that I don't support paying software for software that's good. You want Doodle to survive, so maybe you will decide to pay for it. Anyway, next up is Uber Conference. Uber Conference is one, I've talked about this in past webinars, and it's really one of my favorite tools out there, especially since they recently turned off the those entry tone notices for people who come on and off the conference lines as an option. So if you're over, I think, 4 or 5 people, it turns off the entry notice automatically, which was always a big issue for me, because if you have 20 or 30 people on the line, people constantly coming in and off, you hear the tones, it's very annoying. But they finally updated that feature, so thank you, Uber Conference, if you're listening. Anyway, they are for audio only and document sharing situations. So you're capable of chatting in the tool and using some level of document collaboration with an integration with Google Docs. So Uber Conference, you can do audio and document sharing collaboration. Freeconferencecalling.com is a great tool for audio only conferencing. Okay, so if you need to have an audio only, this allows you to be able to not only see who, very similar to Uber Conference, see who's talking at any given time. You can mute callers and so on and so forth, and be able to do those kinds of things. So great tool for audio-only conferencing, and it's free. Next up is Meeting Burner. Meeting Burner is a very flexible and great tool. Again, it gives you all browser-based ability to do audio, video, and screen sharing within the browser. So it's pretty fantastic, and you have Skype integration for people who need to connect via Skype, conference lines, all of those things all built into the tool. Next up is Wigio, or Wigio, I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced, but Wigio is a tool I think I've spoken about in past webinars, but either way I'm mentioning it again because it is just really phenomenal. 1, it's free. 2, it has everything in it, from you can create mini groups to big groups to conference calls to holding a virtual conference summit inside of the thing. It's just a really big program with all of these really great tools within. It has a whiteboard. You can document collaborate, you can document share, you can screen share, you can video chat, you can do whatever you want in the tool. It's really, really phenomenal. So Wigio, or Wigio, basically it does everything and the kitchen sink. Okay, and then one of my favorite tools to use for online meetings in general, just because of the fact that it's all in the cloud, it's all on the web, there's just a web browser and you can do everything, is Google Hangouts. I just log in using my Google account. Most people have at least a Gmail account, if not a Google account attached to their business, email, and it's free, which is fantastic, and you can do audio only. So you can have an audio Google Hangout, and you can have as many people on there as you want. You can do audio video. You can have up to 10 people in the Google Hangout video, as many other additional people via audio. Okay, so that is a limitation. But how many meetings do you have, more than 10 people in? You make that decision, and whether or not Google Hangouts works for you there. Document and screen sharing. So document collaboration as well as screen sharing components. Because it's Google, you're using Google Drive, integrations within those tools, and it's really, really fantastic. Okay, so those are the 6 tools. I'm just going to jump over to each of them so you can just sort of see what they look like and have some semblance of familiarity. Okay, so first up is Doodle, and hopefully you can see Doodle on your screen. I'm going to go into full screen so that you can see these. And so here goes Doodle. When you go to doodle.com, it's going to ask you to go ahead and log in. You actually don't have to log in order to be able to schedule an event, all right? But I typically log in so that I can have management and administrative functions subsequent to going ahead and registering the event or scheduling the event. All right, so it gives me the ability to do a bunch of things. In general, I just want to go ahead and schedule an event, so I click Schedule Event at the top, and it has me go through the process of scheduling an event. As you can see, it is advertising supported. So, whoops, it just jumped to the bottom. Here at the top of the screen and along the sides is going to be some advertising. I just ignore it because you can, and but I suggest you support your advertisers anyway if you need them. Anyway, so I'm going to type in digital meeting here, and if the location is a Google Hangout, I put in Google Hangouts, and then the description of the meeting. Okay, you can see that's my name and my email address, and then I go ahead and click Next. It gives me the opportunity to propose times, and this is what's cool about it. You can just basically say, these are the times I'm available, and so you pick a couple of dates, and you say, I want to meet, these 3 days in November. Whoops. And what it does is on the right-hand side panel here, you've selected those dates. Next, it has you align what times you're going to be available in that calendar. And I apologize, it's sort of jumping around for you, but that's because it's loading the advertising. It normally doesn't do that when I'm not connected to the webinar software. All right, let's say I'm available at 10 a.m., at 11 a.m., and you can see it's natural language, so I'm just typing in 11 a.m. and it's putting in the right moments, and say 1 p.m., say I'm available at 1, 2 p.m., and 3 p.m. on the following day, and say I'm available at 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. on that subsequent day. When I click on Next, it goes ahead and gives me the options for a couple of things. One is a basic poll, right, and that's all I really want. You can make it more complicated. Under Settings, I can choose that option I talked about earlier, which is yes, no, and if need be, right? So here, yes, no, if need be poll. So I want to basically say I want to make sure that people can say I'm available, I'm not available, and if I have to, I can make it, okay? And there's other options there, but you can look at those yourself. Everyone with a link can participate in the sharing settings, or only the invited people can participate, okay? So in most cases, I'm going to put only the invited people because I want only those people to participate, and of course, I want to participate, and so then I just type in the email addresses of the people who I want to. I can also connect to Google, Office 365, and Outlook, and iCloud, and then connect the right people, add a personal message, hit send, they get a link, they come to a landing page that looks like a scheduling page, and they're good to go, okay? So here, I'm going to invite Tracy just for the fun of it, and I'm going to hit Finish, and now I can view the poll, okay? I'm not going to do this with each of these tools, by the way. I just want to cover this one because it's just helpful to see. Let's see, where is it? I somehow clicked out of it. Hold on. Okay, so when people come to the page, they're going to basically see a table or calendar view. They won't see the administration tab because that's for you. But here, you can see that when we scroll down, we can see that the available meeting times and so forth are all laid out. This little accordion piece here expands by clicking on it, so you can see all of the options. And you can see here people can choose when they're available, when they're not available, and you too can also say when you're available, yes if need be. And so I can say yes, yes, well, because I of course chose all of these times, I'm available all of these times. You then go ahead and click save, and then you come back to it and you see when everybody has voted, and when they haven't voted, you can go ahead and follow up with them and so on and so forth. Really, really fantastic tool for being able to just do some really quick and easy scheduling. Okay, so check it out. Next up is UberConference. UberConference is a conferencing tool, and I'm just going to show you what the interface looks like, but let's just log in there. You get your own UberConference line and so on and so forth, and you have the option of being able to go in and participate by call-in with a phone. You can just view, okay, so you're just going to watch on the computer screen. Then you can also talk and listen with your computer, so you can connect purely in the browser here via headset or the microphone into your computer or laptop. Again, what I recommend is always having a headset, because for call quality purposes and for not getting feedback, it's really, really helpful. Some of the great functions within UberConference is that you can see that I'm connected to the call right now. If there was somebody else in there, say Tracy went ahead and joined this, I could see Tracy, and I could do a number of different things to every participant in the call. So if I wanted to have a conversation and I didn't want Tracy to be able to hear the conversation I was having with two other people on the call, as the administrator of the call, I could basically put earmuffs on Tracy. Okay, so I can take Tracy's audio and turn it off so that she can't hear me. Okay, and that means I could have a private conversation with other people, which could be very, very helpful if, say, you need to share private human resources information with somebody. So you're, by law, not allowed to tell other people about those informations, or just for privacy purposes, you don't want to share medical condition or something else like that. You can say, okay, hold on a second, basically silence those people's audio so they're not hearing that information, then bring them back on. You can mute people, especially people who are going on and on and on, and you need them to quiet down, or if they get upset, you can go ahead and mute them, and then know that you're safely capable of moving along with the conversation with them muted. So UberConference is great. If you have the upgraded version, the upgraded version allows you to be able to have everyone dialed into the call at the time of the call automatically. So what that means is that I don't have to dial into the conference call. It will literally just call me at the time of the conference call, which is really, really helpful for me because sometimes I have many different conferences that I need to be on, and I have to get work done, so I can work and work and work, and then it'll just call me when the time is time to meet, and it's done, and nobody has to dial into, remember dial-in pins. Nobody has to remember what time the call was necessarily. It just calls you. So that's really helpful. Down here is the sharing functions. You can see that you can share your screen or a window, and you can share a file. So you could do all of those things and collaborate within the UberConference interface. That way there's a chat panel, so you can chat here. And so really functional. Okay, you can go ahead and mute everyone, you can record the line, and you can also lock the conference. So once everybody who's supposed to be in attendance comes in, you lock it, and nobody else can then dial in also, so that it's a understood secure conference call. You can see past conferences and download recordings, and all of the other fun stuff from the conferences drop down here. You can schedule them, and you can just do them impromptu. Okay, so really, really helpful. All right, that's UberConference. Next up is freeconferencecalling.com, and just very, very briefly, and pretty much does all the same things you can see the UberConference do, and but it gives you some really great things. So you can manage calls. When you click on the manage call, people actually have to be dialed in, so you really can't see it, but you can see who's talking, you can mute people, that kind of thing. That's pretty basic. You can record calls, and then you can go ahead and look at those calls again, and even give people the dial-in number to listen back to those recordings if they need to, so you can listen back to the prior meeting. You can see reports of how long calls took and all those other kinds of things. You can administer it under the account. What I really like about free conference calling is that you can give specific pins for specific kinds of meetings. So if you have a regular monthly meeting with these 5 people, you can go ahead and give them that pin, and that becomes that meeting's channel. Okay, and so you always meet by that pin. and that's really helpful, especially if they're being recorded. And so if you have, a monthly board meeting, all your board members are meeting by that pin, and then it's recorded, and they can hear the last minute's recording, the last meeting's recording, via dialing in and using that pin again. So really, really helpful for being able to have, multiple channels of meetings and that kind of thing. Okay, next up is Meeting Burner. I'm not going to have time to go over this, but basically, if you have 10 attendees or less, you can use the Get Free Forever account. And there's no ads or anything else like that, but you can do live meetings. You can't record, and you can't do what's called autopilot the meetings, which means that they're basically auto-scheduled, and they call people in and all that other fun stuff. For $40 a month, you can have up to 50 members live meetings, and you can record the meetings. Okay, again, like I said, you can document audio, video, screen share, and collaborate, and all of those fun things. And then next up is Wigio. As I said, it pretty much does everything. You can have meetings, you can have events, you can do polls, you can share files, you can privately message, you do all those fun things in here. It's a fantastic tool. I really don't understand why it's free. So it just is, and works really well. So you can check out Wigio or Wigio and see whether that's the right tool for you. And then last but not least is the Google Hangouts tool. Again, you could do text-based messaging and so on and so forth. You can make voice calls and video calls, but you can also then share documents inside of the item. The really great part about Google Hangouts is that you could do it from your Android device, you could do it from your iOS device, you could do it from the web. There's no additional hardware or infrastructure that you need. It's all really here, and it's very, very seamless. So I can log out of my call on my phone and transfer over to my desktop when necessary, and go from there. So it's really, really helpful being able to do those things. If I want to start a new conversation, I just go ahead and choose who I'm going to have that conversation with. If I'm going to have that with somebody in-house, I can go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and share that, but the point is that we could do all of those things. I can have a video call and all those other fun things. So really great tool for being able to do those, either impromptu or scheduled calls. Okay, I can't show you Google Hangouts, but I've shown Google Hangouts in prior ones anyway, so you can go back if you need to. Maybe we'll do a Google Hangouts in the new year. All right, so audio, video, document, and screen sharing. I just want to really, really quickly go over some of the really important guidelines for facilitating and doing some post-managing of meetings, some post-management, okay? So just very, very quickly, one, you should always, if you're facilitating a meeting, you should always recirculate the agenda right before the meeting, okay? Frequently what I hear people do is they lost it, they lost the email, they couldn't find the agenda that they printed, and so they're wherever they are, because remember, they don't have to be in a fixed location. They didn't have to print that agenda off and put it in front of themselves and then sit down in a meeting room. You're not capable of giving them a printed physical agenda when they walk in the room. So the next best thing is to actually recirculate that agenda right before the meeting, and it's usually now updated to have the actual things that you're going to be discussing on the agenda. Okay, so that's really helpful. Be early to help with tech issues. So frequently people have problems getting on and off the digital meetings. Even if it's just a phone call, people sometimes have issues. So be there early so people can be helped, even if that means getting tech support to help you as opposed to you. You want to be able to greet people and start on time. So it's really important that you go ahead and have tech support available, or at least know how to treat tech issues as they happen. Make sure to greet all your attendees. Just because this is a digital meeting doesn't mean that some of the politeness and the courteousness of life just goes away. You should really work to make sure that you're trying to broach the digital gap there, because it can somewhat feel, especially if you have 4 people who are in person on video, and 2 or 3 people who are by digital, you want to make sure that you're being just as conversational and just as open and inviting to them via digital as you would be to the people who are in the room with you, because they tend to feel less involved and less invited because of their digital presence. It's not your fault, it's just the nature of our human condition. So you want to really make sure that you greet people and be helpful to them. I can't impress upon you enough to start on time. And this comes down to one of the issues that people have, is that they're like, oh, well, so and so forth is just a couple minutes late. Latecomers will learn to lose, okay? I'm sorry, but if you're late to meetings, you lose out. and you learn to come and show up on time. And all kinds of things happen, I understand that, but if you create a culture in your small business, as your business grows, people get used to that culture, okay? And culture is very difficult to change once it's created, so you really need to start on time. You need to get people to understand that starting on time is important for everybody. That means that projects finish on time. That means projects are started on time and finish on time. That means they happen on budget and under the expectations that were set for them. But starting on time is just one of those small habits that has compound benefits to the overarching productivity and success of your business. Start on time. Let latecomers learn that they're going to lose out if they don't show up on time. Focus on decision points. So if you're in the conversation, you're going to have to actually step back throughout the meeting and make sure that you're paying attention to when decision points need to be made, okay? And when conversations have gone on too long and they've drolled and drolled and drolled, you've got to be able to wake everybody up and say, this is the time that we make a decision, guys and gals. This is it. So, enough of talking about the fringe and the margins. Let's get to the meat of this conversation. We've discussed this enough. What's the decision? And bring it to either a vote or your decision on the matter, okay? Next up is pay attention to the people who end up dominating the conversation. So, in this particular situation, I'm presenting. I'm supposed to be talking this much. But if we were in a meeting together, it would be really weird and awkward for me not to have heard any of your voices in the conversation. It would be up to the meeting facilitator or the meeting organizer to politely sort of guide people away, especially in a digital environment. Many times, not many times, that may require you, just in the rare few occasions, like I said, you may have to mute the person. You may have to say, listen, we're hearing a lot from you, and we need just you to back down, okay? Or if they get very passionate about a topic, sometimes those things are required. But that's what gives you, as the meeting organizer or facilitator, the ability to go ahead and mute people. That can be very, very helpful in certain situations. Use it, wisely and judiciously. But that sometimes does happen. But you have to make sure you pay attention to people who are dominating, and then of course asking people who maybe haven't spoken what their thoughts are. One of the most important things coming out of any meeting is asking what's the next step or action when a decision point has been made. What's the next step or action that needs to be taken? That's the big question to be asking. And then we also need to send meeting notes promptly. One of the things is that a scribe takes notes, they send them off to everybody, nobody ever looks at them again, and then people go on with their lives. You come back to our next meetings and nothing's been done, and everybody's curious why. We need to make sure that meeting notes should be asked for corrections immediately upon meeting's end, so the meeting notes should go out immediately. The scribe should send them off just the way they are. Corrections are made. People should be expected to give back corrections within X number of hours to maybe X number of days, and so that people are all on the same page as it relates to what the meeting minutes state, okay? Now this is not, again, we're not talking about necessarily board governance or making sure that meeting minutes by bylaws are being set or otherwise. But for good, effective meeting management, we know that people need to know what's being sort of quote-unquote set in stone as to what was said and decided in the meeting. So doing that is really, really helpful. Finally, circulate next steps and actions with due dates directly to the responsible people so that people know what they're supposed to do. Separate email, separate communique. You need to be able to send that to them and say, these are the next steps that were decided, you're responsible, and this is when it's due, okay? And then finally, as a meeting facilitator, you need to make sure that you follow up on those next steps and actions. It's really important for you to go ahead and take the additional step to make sure that if someone said, I'm going to get this done in 3 days, that they actually get it done in 3 days, and those kinds of meeting issues don't languish. One other point as we go into Q&A, and I know we're coming up on time, so make sure that if your meeting was recorded, for those who couldn't attend, make sure that you send that to them with those next steps and actions and due dates that they're responsible for, because it's really helpful to them to be able to reference that back. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tracy. Tracy, you can ask for questions and close out, and I'll be here to answer questions.
Great, thanks, Ray. Right now we don't have any questions, so since we're right at the hour, I'm going to go ahead and close out. If anybody has questions, still feel free to type those into the question window and Ray will answer them. But for those of you who've got other things planned for the day, we'll go ahead and finish up. Thanks everyone for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded and it'll be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under live webinars and recordings. Tomorrow you'll be receiving a follow-up email on the webinar and there'll be an evaluation link in that email. Please help us to continue to improve our training by taking the time to complete the evaluation. I also posted a link to the evaluation directly in the chat window. You are welcome to take that evaluation or complete that evaluation now, and see everyone on November 19th for Overloaded Inbox. Google has the solution for you. And right now we do not have any questions, Ray. So we'll go